Awesome. So thank you everyone who's joining us today for our hug. Today we're going to talk about building an inbound marketing strategy. We're going to use a few examples and dive through some best practices. This is really informal, and the purpose of our hug is to share and learn together. So please chime in at any time with any questions that you have. Hugs are HubSpot user groups. We are supported by HubSpot. They give us resources, topic ideas. We often have HubSpot people come and join us and do presentations and really dive into product knowledge. So we're really excited to have been selected as the Caribbean HubSpot user group leader, and we go deep on content strategy because that's really what we do. While these are educational, they really are meant to be community building as well. So, it would be really great. It's morning, we're tired, it's midweek, but, coming off camera, chatting and networking and meeting other people, this is a really good opportunity to meet other HubSpot users and to just really join and become part of the community. So join our group. We'll continue to email you because you're our peeps. So we'll let you know about our upcoming events, but join our HubSpot user group, group on the HubSpot community, and then you can make sure that you get updates for everything that's coming. So a little bit about us. If you haven't met Tiffany or I before, we are part of Chronix Digital. And, Chronix is a globally distributed team. We are everywhere. Our head office is here in the Cayman Islands, where I am based. Tiffany, as she mentioned, she's in Portugal. She's from the US, from Nashville. So we've got a really good team of digital nomads. For the most part, when you meet our team, it's like, oh, here's Tanya, she's from Canada, but lives in the Cayman Islands. Here is, Jose, he's from Mexico, but lives in. So everyone's kind of a little bit of everywhere, which is fun. We get to travel. We don't have to do face-to-face. We can just meet you wherever you are. So we are here today to talk about what is inbound marketing, how to pick a topic, what are pillar pages and blog posts, how do they work together? And then we're going to dive into reporting and have time for Q&A. So I'm going to kick it over to Tiffany, who's going to kick us off here.
Perfect. Thank you for that and the intro. So let's start with the basics.
Recording in progress.
Uh-oh. Just heard the recording. Just started. That's fine. So let's start with the basics. What is inbound marketing? It's a strategic approach that focuses on creating high quality content in order to attract leads and nurture them through the buyer's journey, which is easier said than done, right? So how does that work in practice? Usually it's broken down into 4 different marketing stages, and that's attract, convert, close, and delight. The very first stage is attract, and that's where you're trying to attract new prospects or strangers to your site, usually by providing some sort of content people are searching for or answering a question someone may have. And this is typically accomplished through blog posts, search engine optimization, or social media. And once they've come to your site, the next step is to convert them into leads by collecting their information. And like most people, at least speaking for myself, I generally don't like to give up my information unless getting something in return. So usually you want to offer maybe a free ebook, a free consultation, a webinar in order to collect that information into a form or a landing page or a CTA. And then once you've gotten that information, you want to turn those leads into customers at the close stage. And that's generally done through marketing automation or email nurturing. And the very last step is delight. So once you've gotten those customers, you want to continue on engaging them with maybe product offers, content, social media, just purely because those customers are some of your biggest advocates for your brand. So you want to turn them into a promoter. And I think that is the quick summary of inbound marketing.
So I'm going to jump into campaign planning. Where do you even start? And this is the challenge. You see a lot of websites and blogs that just push out content that's so random sometimes. So it's good to really start with the theme, and you want to identify what's your topic theme? How does that align with your actual target persona and their goals and objectives? We're going to plan out the assets that we're going to use. We're going to execute the campaign, and then we're going to report and review on like, did it even work? What happened here? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify a topic. If you have a really good sales team that gives you a lot of feedback, that's the best way to start, because they'll say like, oh, I keep getting this question repeatedly. And you can be like, well, let's write about it. Let's do a blog test, a help series, build our knowledge base out. And you can listen to them and other members on your team to identify your content gaps. Or you can build out, a content spreadsheet to be like, what topics are we covering? Going back to what Tiffany had with that buyer's journey and the different stages, when somebody's moving through that funnel, what information do they need at each stage? So you can identify gaps that way. You can do a little competitive research, follow what your competitors are doing, read their site, creep their social media. You'll know what they're up to. That can give you some ideas as well as to what you're missing. Or to spark like, oh, well, they're talking about that, but we do this other thing that's way better. You can get some ideas that way to talk about it. Your analytics can be really insightful. I know for us, when we dig into our analytics, we have a few content pieces on image sizing, like what size should your website images be? It is on fire. People are always searching for that. So digging into the analytics and seeing that is such a huge demand topic can give us some ideas for, well, now how can we write that for other personas and other stages of the journey? Google Trends is really good for like hot topics, seeing what's really breakout and new that you haven't thought of before. And people also ask, which you see when you do a Google search, and it'll be like, do a Google search for like your key thing, and you'll see that people also ask. That's a really good way to kind of data mine and dive deeper, drill down into like the ways real people are searching for it and not just, the way we talk about our services. And I'll go through and I'll give some specific examples on these in a bit. But so once we get a few ideas, when you go through and do that, you should have like a pretty good list of kind of rough ideas, but then you want to tie it into your target persona. And we have a target persona worksheet that we'll share a link to with you after, that really dives into who are you speaking to. How you write to a doctor is going to be different to how you write to a mechanic, both in the language that you use, the nuances, like what their day-to-day looks like. It's really different. So you want to make sure that you're speaking to them in, terms that they relate to, but also goals and objectives that they're going to relate to. They're each going to have different questions and interests. And then when you're trying to distribute your content, you want to be really mindful of where do they get their news and updates? Are they going to TechCrunch, or are they going to CNN? Like, it's different audiences on different platforms. So how you distribute and where you distribute is going to be really important. And then a really good one to think about is what keeps them up at night. You get a lot of searches for people who are, whether it's B2C or B2B, people think about problems like, where am I going to put my kids in school next year? How am I going to plan this trip to Greece that I want to do? How am I going to optimize my SAP operations and not have my CEO yell at me about budget? Like, we all have these goals we're trying to achieve and these blockers. So really thinking about that and how you can be the hero is going to change the game to how you plan out your strategy. So the next slide here, this is an example of how we're going to tie it all together. So you have your persona and their pain points, and then you take your features, how can you solve for that pain point? And then you're going to have a few ideas of different content bits. We're going to walk through this example in a little bit more detail in a bit here. But what you can see is that really tying it back to that persona is going to break down what those bits of content are going to be, and then you can put it all back together. So kind of shifting to like, we're going through all these ideas, we have content ideas, we have our persona, but like, what do we need to create? An ideal inbound strategy and your campaign plan is going to have one piece of pillar content. So that could be like a pillar page on your site. It could be a downloadable ebook. It's something that is juicy enough that people are going to be willing to exchange their information to get it. As Tiffany said, people aren't just going to drop in their name and email for anything. It has to have some sort of value. So an example that we're going to walk through is the Beginner's Guide to Psychedelic Assisted Therapy, which will make more sense when we go through the example. But you have that main pillar piece. It's probably not going to just light it up on its own. You're going to need to build links to it, have other supporting content for it. And really, you're going to have to flesh out that campaign to boost those links in. So to do that, we're going to do 12 supporting blog posts. That generally works out to 1 a week for 3 months. So you can have your big main piece of content, and once a week, you're publishing a blog post, you're sharing it on social. Each of these blog posts is like a micro piece that ties back into that pillar piece. So you link back to it. You've got your CTAs. Each of those blog posts looks at it a little bit differently. So you can capture different keyword rankings and traffic organically. And also on the social posts, the different posts are going to reach people at different times, have a different call to action. They get to that blog post and then they're like, ooh, I want to read more. So I'm going to click the CTA that goes back to the pillar page. And then ideally, they are submitting their form, downloading whatever they're going to download. You get that contact information. You can drop them in an email nurture campaign. And then Lena, I'm just going to mute you. I'm sorry. And then you can drip them and nurture them to get them to convert to whatever you're selling or whatever service you're offering. So that's kind of how it all ties together. And now let's give a real life example. So we have a client, Atma. They are kind of new to the scene. They offer training for therapists to be able to provide psychedelic assisted therapy. Now, this is a really emerging market. There's lots of questions, for practitioners, is this legal? Can I offer it? How do you get training? What are the certifications? What even are these psychedelics? So we realized people aren't necessarily searching for training right away. We need to educate them earlier on. So here's that example of people also ask, doing a quick search for psychedelic therapy, we can see that people and consumers are looking for, what is it used for? What kind of drugs are used for treatment? What mental illnesses can you treat? And this is really good for us to identify, well, this is what we should write about. So we just start taking our list of ideas, different questions. And then what we want to do is to tie it back into our persona. So using our persona matrix, we have psychiatrist Phil. Now, psychiatrist Phil has been practicing for a while. He's got his own clinic. He's educated. He's got his PhD. And he wants to know more about this because some of his clients have started asking him. He's got a few clients that come in and are like, can I microdose myself for treatment? And he's like, this sounds super sketch. I don't know. So he needs to know more about it so that he can talk to his patients about it. But he also wants to know more about it because he doesn't know if he can offer this. Why would he even want to offer this? Is this a viable thing or is it super sketch? So Phil has a lot of questions about general awareness, but also about protecting himself legally and in his career. So we're going to go back to this matrix that we've already shared. We know, working with Atma and seeing the research and seeing the studies, that there have been a lot of clinical studies that have shown that MDMA assisted therapy has been just revolutionary with treatment resistant PTSD. So using that as a conversation starter for psychiatrist Phil to be like, hey, there's this new treatment method. It's been shown to have a lot of effect. And if you offer this, you can make breakthrough with some of your patients that haven't had a lot of movement before. Plus, you can enhance your service offering and grow your clinic and grow your business, which, for him, this is probably one of his goals. So breaking this down, we can look at it a few different ways, what is MDMA assisted therapy? Is this legal? Give a couple case studies. Where does this fit into mental health treatment? And then, fun ones, pick lists, 12 facts about psychedelics all doctors need to know. things that are going to like catch his interest, get him in there and be like, hadn't really been thinking about it too much before, but now we can give him this little piece of blog information, give that CTA to be like, learn more. Here's the practitioner's guide, get him into the workflow, and then start to nurture him that way. So that is really how we go about it. Oh, and I've duplicated the slides. This really breaks it down, you know, to all of those different ways you can slice it. And then really, once you do this and run with it, then you start to check your reports and see what's working so that you can tweak and reassess and analyze. So I'm going to kick it back to Tiffany here to talk about that side of it.
Thank you. As Tanya was saying, once you've kind of done that campaign planning, then it's the reporting step. And we're going to cover basically what is a HubSpot campaign, the benefits of tagging things as a campaign, how to analyze them, and why you should compare your campaigns. And let's start with the very first thing, which is what is a HubSpot campaign? It's a way to tag related assets together into a singular marketing campaign. So for example, if you're running a webinar and you're wanting to promote it, you probably would create a landing page. You may have a form to fill out. You may publish some blog posts, some social media posts, do some email nurturing to kind of promote that webinar. And you can actually tag all those different assets together as a campaign. And the reason why you want to do that is so that you can measure the overall performance in one place. And here's an example of what that looks like. This is the campaign dashboard. And you can get here by going to marketing in the menu, then to campaigns, and then just clicking on your campaign. And this will take you to this main performance tab here. And you're going to see some top level KPIs for the campaign, sessions, contacts, closed deals. And then you're going to also see this line graph over time, and you can change out the frequency. And you can also swap this to see new contacts, sessions, and also influence contacts over time as well. But the really nice feature is that you can see all the different assets that you tagged in the campaign together here. And then you can see how do they perform overall, how many views for the blog, how many different clicks for social post, how many different submissions for website pages. And if you actually click into one of those items, it goes into even more detail. So for example, if you had multiple social posts or multiple blog posts, you can see how did it perform, those different blog posts against each other. You could see, for example, how many views did it get, submissions, contacts. And this is really helpful going forward so that you can determine what type of post you should run in order to kind of hit that goal going forward for those campaigns. So it's very helpful to kind of dive into those metrics specifically all together. And if you want to get a little bit more detail, you can go into the attribution tab, which breaks things out by contacts created, deal created, and revenue. And even like, for example, right now, you can see the asset type by contacts created. And as you go a little bit further down the page, you could see it broken out by source, so organic, referral, direct, interaction type, like page view form CTA. And once again, this is another great benefit in order to be able to see what type of asset is performing the best, what's hitting your goals, so that going forward, you'll know what to focus your time and energy on. And then once you've run multiple campaigns, you can actually compare them to each other. And so you can just add a couple different campaigns here. We have 3 being compared, and you can see some top level KPIs. And then you can also see the asset performance down below. So if you had blog posts, emails, for example, you can see how do they measure up against each other. And something like this is really useful. For example, just looking at these 3 campaigns, you can see this one drove the most sessions, which seems great, but this one actually drove on the right the most contacts. So if your goal is to drive the most contacts, now you know what type of campaign to run going forward in the future. Or if your goal is to drive traffic, you know to do the one to the left instead. So it's really helpful to see how do those different campaigns perform and which one should you use for your goals going forward. So it's very useful. And I think that brings us to the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to take a minute here and share my screen too. I have a real life dashboard here for the HubSpot one that we can share. And this is just backing onto exactly what Tiffany was just sharing. So I mentioned at the start, our image size campaign like lights it up. We get tons of traffic. Everyone wants to know like what size should my hero banner be? So we get loads and loads of traffic. And yeah, we've generated 5 contacts, but no deals, no revenue. Like, it's not, it's good vanity one, makes our website traffic look great. But at the end of the day, as a business and an agency, we would like to make money and pay our team. So it's nice to be able to switch and see different ways and be like, well, you know, when we talk about HubSpot CMS and all of the website development and design work we do, we don't get as much traffic, but we get lots of people who are interested. You know, we've closed a few deals. But if we want to look at where the money is, it's actually for us for SEO and core web vitals, and talking about that intersection of HubSpot CMS and core web vitals and how you can optimize to improve page speed. So tracking your campaigns in HubSpot, tracking all your blog posts, your CTAs, your forms can give you information like this that's just so vital. And then you can go back and reiterate and be like, well, you know, images are great and there's a lot of interest there, but how can we tie that in with our persona? Like, you know, should we talk about images for SEO? Should we talk about specific image optimization in HubSpot? And then you can really dive in. So it's really daunting at the start to know what to talk about, but then as you get that data, you can tweak and refine in ways that just really help you find that real good spot. Does anyone have any questions, ideas, use cases, anything to share? Cool stories, we'll take bragging. Good content win. I'll share a story. We had a client that was an addiction center for gambling addiction. And so the content that you write, you know, tends to be pretty state of the mill. Like, we found that people with addictions tend to not self-identify as much. It tends to be the people around them who want to know, like, is this like an addiction problem or just a like whatever problem? So writing our ideal persona was not actually our client, it was the people around them. So giving those resources and guides. So we did that and got a lot of data, but then when we were looking through the analytics, we realized that people were coming to the site and searching for women specific treatment, and we had no content. So I identified that gap of like, oh, hey, we don't have any content on this. We never even thought about how this experience might be different based on gender. So diving into that persona, redoing our persona work there to say, well, how is the experience different for women? And some of those questions that came out, like, can my kids visit me? You know, what if I'm pregnant? What if, like, do I have to share, you know, my rehab space with men? Maybe I'm going through a tough place and I don't feel comfortable with that. Doing a like women specific campaign was a huge win because nobody else, the competitors, didn't have any content on that. So we were able to really corner that market and capture a ton of traffic. And it was a huge win for them and their business, all because we dove into the analytics and identified those searches in there. We would have totally missed it otherwise. All right, Casey has a good question about the campaign conversion report. Can it be saved? Yes. So you can save that onto your dashboard. And you can have it email out as well, but you know, if you don't have things happening daily or weekly, not as great. But yes, you can save that in a dashboard and share with the team. Any other questions? If deals are not being tracked. So if deals are not being tracked in HubSpot, you can still do the campaign tracking to see how much traffic is coming to the site, how many new contacts are being generated, how many existing contents are interacting with it. But you won't have that data of like the revenue data that pulls from deals. If your contacts are getting updated to customers in the CRM, you will be able to see how many like actual customers were generated or were influenced by your campaigns, but you won't have the revenue data with the deals. Tiffany, anything you want to add? Oh, one more question.
Oh, one more question.
Keep them coming, Casey. Ooh, good examples of campaign goals. Tiffany, you want to take that one?
Generally, I would probably say building contacts. That's probably one of like getting leads. That's probably one of the biggest things you want to do, because once you can get those leads, you can nurture them to become customers. So usually the first step, as we said before, is kind of getting leads. So I'd probably make that to be the main targeting campaign, the main option when probably if you're going to launch, like, for example, if you're going to do like a webinar, or if you're going to try putting out an ebook, something like that, it would be to see how many leads can I get specifically from that campaign. Jenna, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I'd say, yeah, new leads for sure. If you can track deals and revenue, it's always nice to tie that in. Some campaigns will just inherently have different goals. So you might be looking at like a re-engagement campaign. Your goal for that wouldn't necessarily be new contacts, but it would be the conversion of those contacts. And different parts of your campaign might have different goals too, like your pillar content, you might have traffic goals, ranking goals, and lead gen goals. But then once you get those leads in through your form, you're going to want to nurture them through that email sequence. So your email sequence might have a goal of converting to an actual customer. From a webinar, for sure, email nurture goal. Yeah. So your email nurture goal, and HubSpot is great because you can set your goal in your email nurture. So you can say the goal is we want people to book a meeting and do a demo, or our goal is to have a closed deal, or our goal is to become a customer, or our goal is to like engage with that next piece of content and get in the next nurture workflow. So you can set that up a bit. And then, you know, when you're doing your report, if you set the goal in your workflow, you can report on that too, instead of just like, they did what we wanted them to do and they dropped out. So Kyra asks, can you measure effectiveness of outside sources not in HubSpot, like a blog post not created in HubSpot? Yes, with an asterisk. If you have HubSpot tracking code on your WordPress site, for example, or any other site, you can see those pages in HubSpot. That tracking code will show that. So then if you have a form submission on that page and you're using the form listener or you're using embedded HubSpot forms, you'll be able to see submissions by page for that. You can also use your CTA buttons. If you have embedded CTAs in your blogs, you can use those to track the performance of your blog posts to driving like to your landing page or your pillar page. Tiffany, anything you'd want to add on that one?
I think it's probably the best way to kind of pull it into HubSpot to see that data. But I mean, obviously, if you have a different tool that you're using for analytics or something else that you're using to look at reports like Data Studio, Tableau, you can always see it specifically in that content. But if you do it outside of HubSpot, I think what Tanya mentioned is probably the best way to pull that data in or to see it specifically there.
Yeah. So Kyra's follow-up question, can I add those tracking codes to specific campaigns? Yes. And I'll share my screen once more here. So when you are in HubSpot, you have your campaigns. So you can pop into your campaign and grab your tracking code from here and create new tracking URLs. So you can be like, oh, I want it to be tracked to this campaign. The URL for the landing page is this, you know, my pillar page, but I'm going to be sharing this on, I'm going to put it on LinkedIn. You could find it in here and say, this is a LinkedIn organic post that I'm sharing that's tying back to my campaign page. And you can track it all this way. And then that pulls right in as well. And it'll build that UTM code for you. So you can get to this from your campaigns report. So here I am just in report, analytics tools, and you have your campaign analytics. So from here, you can pop into any campaign specifically, or if you go into your reports and then your analytics tool, you have your tracking URL builder right from here, and you can track like pretty much anything. Aw, you guys are great. Thank you so much. Hope to see future
Very
events.
nice.
Oh, best feedback ever. So we'll send a recap email. We'll have a recording of the video. We're going to do a blog post that links to all these different things and have a few screenshots and examples. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to email myself or Tiffany, Tanya or Tiffany at chronixdigital.com, and we'll get back to you right away. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Short and sweet. We'll let you get on with your day. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.